I do snag it, of course, in my sleep.
Camtasia is lovely and really easy just for the bare bones. I want to record a thing. Okay, I want to stop recording a thing.
Yeah, no, so I've heard, but
Yeah.
you still have to like do it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just
Just
and I have
as an
never
FYI, it was very user
yeah,
friendly.
I have not even ever just done it because it just hasn't come to that.
So
But
do you use the screen recorder and Snagit? Because it's got a nice screen recorder.
oh, no, I haven't done any of my own screen recording.
Ah,
Yeah, she's got people that do that for her.
I
I know.
have
You
people.
got stuff in the
I have
You have people.
minions.
Good for you. You ought to.
No, I don't have them always. I have to
Right.
go. I have to search for them when I
Right.
need them, which is why I probably should learn how to do it myself.
yeah. Oh, I like big cups like that.
Oh,
And I
me
cannot
too.
lie.
These were at a garage
Oh,
sale.
nice.
They were like 4 for $1. So of course I bought all 4 of them.
Oh, of course, yeah.
It's beautiful.
And
Because
it's like,
you're
well, what do I
break
need the rest of my mugs for now? So I just sort of like, except they're all like souvenir mugs
Right.
or
Somebody
stuff
gave
that
this
are
to me.
cute. And so they're just filling up my cupboard. I never use them because they're not big,
Yeah,
but
that's a great mug.
I can't get rid of them. So yeah, no, I have 4 of those.
Maybe you
So-
could make like you could have a shelf and it displays your cups from,
Oh man.
you know, the Grand
Some of my
Tetons.
older ones I do
Yeah.
have on a shelf in the office here
Nice.
that are like, from events and stuff. I have
Right.
an old SQL Server 4.2 mug on a shelf here.
Oh yeah, you don't want to get rid of that.
And of course I don't want to get rid of it, but I'm not drinking out of it anymore. So it's just on a shelf in the office. And
Well, yeah, it's outdated.
I can make a shelf away from the kitchen just for display. But then, they'd get
Dusty
dusty
and
and you
stuff,
have
yeah.
to deal with them. And, oh God, life is just too much other
Life
stuff.
is hard.
Your life is hard.
Our
The
life
problem
is
I have
hard.
with the big
Hard.
mugs.
No, it's not hard. It just has so much stuff.
Yeah.
Not just things stuff, but stuff to deal with.
Let me know how
It's
you,
not hard.
if you have a special way to handle this, because the problem I have with the big mugs is keeping the stuff hot for very long, and all of the USB warmers
She
are
clearly doesn't.
garbage.
Yeah.
They're crap. So
They
Do
are.
you-
I've
think about getting a
toyed
hot
with
plate
that
put in your hand.
idea of a USB warmer, but I never did it. And
They don't get good reviews.
I
What
don't.
about that Starbucks?
I don't
mug?
worry
Super
so
easy.
much about keeping it hot. If it's really hot to start with, and then I drink it fast enough that it's not cold when I'm done. But it definitely gets to the lukewarm stage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No,
no, what-
not cold. Cold I couldn't deal with, and then but I just drink it too fast that it doesn't get to cold. Just
Huh.
lukewarm.
I don't. I forget about it for a few minutes, and I turn. Oh, look! I have tea. Oh, look! It's cold now. What am I going to do?
You know,
vicious
tea
cycle.
does seem to get cold faster.
It does.
Yeah, tea does, but tea I don't mind almost cold. Actually,
Yeah.
coffee
want it-
I can't deal with
I want
cold.
it hot or I want it ice. I don't like
Oh,
it in
yeah,
between,
just sort
right?
of like
I don't
formerly hot.
Yes, it has to be deliberate, right? The temperature has to be deliberate.
Accidental
This
tea
is
not
what
my thing.
I chose. Yes, choice is important. We like
So-
choice.
So we are here
Okay,
to talk
we're
about
here.
things.
We're gonna talk about things.
We're going to talk
Yeah,
about
I
things.
saw like 3 minutes before this started that you had a list of things. So
We just
Huh.
came up with. Well, he just came up with it. Like
I know, and I
very
saw that the
recently.
list was only sent to me just a few minutes before I saw it. So
So
you
more
know,
of a
I didn't
warning
feel so
than.
bad.
Well, it's more like a guideline, right? It's not like something I'm going to sit there and go through these things, but they're things that I thought, so we'll see how
Huh.
things go.
Let's ask some questions.
Let's
here.
ask some
Yeah.
questions in an interview. That's weird.
Absolutely.
Oh,
we gotta
right.
do this all official, like so.
Okay,
Hi,
so
I'm
it's
Jen.
you.
I'm Sean.
But my people haven't vetted the questions yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That is a
Should we
problem.
hang up
Yes.
and come back and try again?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
We'll wait.
Well, this will just be like, we'll just see how it goes. This is a trial run.
yeah, we'll do it that way.
Okay, well, I'm Kalen. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. You're always welcome over here, and I'll give you the big cup when you come.
Ah.
So,
I want some more cherry sauce.
some more cherry sauce. Did we make her?
Did we make cherry sauce?
like
we
the
made
jam?
me peaches and cherry sauce.
Oh,
And I
yes, that's right.
And I have not stopped thinking about those peaches and cherry sauce.
Well, when are you coming back? Didn't
I
I hear
don't.
you were coming back soon?
August?
No,
Is it
I
August?
was looking at it. Someone was talking about bringing me in for a conference in Dallas in September,
Go.
October,
Fall.
and it just wasn't good. It just wasn't going to work out.
Oh,
Huh.
I
Well,
would
we'll
have
probably
to
be
cut
at Pat's
short
anyway.
another trip.
the
That
whole
doesn't.
time.
That's not till early November.
Oh, I can't keep track. Well, it was in Halloween last time, so
It was, but it's moved a week later, I think, this year.
I just don't
So
keep track of that.
yeah, it was mid-October, and I'm going to be in Europe for a month, and I would have to stop there on my way home. And
So they postponed it because you're going to be in Europe.
no, they did not. I will not be at that conference, but I'm sure looking for some other way to get back to Dallas. So it just may happen.
Well, we'll make you anything you want when you come.
Well,
That's true,
good. I
do
have months to think about it. That sounds lovely.
Well, and you can come for more than one meal too, right? You can get up the next morning and come for breakfast, and we'll do you some stuff for breakfast.
Now
make-
you're making me hungry, even though I just
Sorry.
ate breakfast.
We make breakfast enchiladas sometimes, and it's yummy.
Oh, God.
Quite good.
Okay,
I
so
will tell you, anyone listening to this, having a meal from Sean is worth a trip to Dallas. I need to keep that in mind and
Yeah.
just go just for that. Oh,
Absolutely.
we
Oh my
hosted
God.
Gareth not too long ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gareth was here.
oh
What
my
did we make
gosh.
him? I don't remember.
We may have made him enchiladas, actually. Nice
no,
guy. Does it really matter?
no. But anyway, I don't remember what we made
Okay,
him.
so here we are.
So
here
one
we
thing
are.
I've always wanted to ask you
Uh-oh.
is, how did you get started in SQL?
You know, I've heard
Me?
this story and I don't
Have you?
remember.
I haven't.
I have. Yeah.
Can you remember back that far? No, it's not going to be that kind of interview.
No!
In SQL Server or in SQL?
In the sequel, let's go with sequel because
Wayback Machine.
I think I remember you came over with Sybase, right? Am I
Well, but I
remembering
had SQL, the language, at university.
Mm,
I took a class. Are you ready for this name dropping, folks?
I'm ready.
I had a database class at UC Berkeley from Michael Stonebreaker.
that? Really?
Yes. Michael
That's some bragging
Stonebreaker was my database professor, the first database class I ever took. And I have stories about Michael Stonebreaker. He was not my favorite person, even though I ended up loving databases and the whole concept and the SQL language just really enthralled me. Michael Stonebreaker was not my favorite person. Can you imagine?
Weird.
He used to give these analogies, what they were working on, this system to to collect and make data available, and it would be so easy that any housewife could do it.
Oh, any housewife.
Wow.
Any housewife
That is
could
simple and
access
easy.
the data. Oh my gosh. So that was just the beginning. I have other stories in similar veins about
I
dear
refuse to believe
Michael
anyone in
Stonebreaker.
technology in the mid 20th, late 20th century was sexist. I just don't understand that.
Well, that
No.
reminds me. A long time ago, one of my first DBA gigs was with Pilgrim's Pride, and the chicken guys, right? And we had to build,
Pilgrim's Pride chicken.
Yeah, the chicken
Yeah.
people, yeah.
and
Okay,
we
thank you
had
for
to build a
clarifying that.
DR plan that they said even the VP's secretary could get our systems back online, and she was in her 70s. And it was, when you try to write a DR plan to that level, it becomes absurd after a while because you end up writing a plan that actually explains what the command line is.
But it's kind of wonderful though that they always use housewives and secretaries. Nobody ever says that the janitor could understand or that
Right,
my middle
right.
school boy could understand. No,
So
no.
there was another woman in that class. There were only the two of us, two women, but she came up with a retort and said, "How about any truck driver could understand?"
Atta girl.
She was great.
There you go.
I just was shocked, but she
Yeah.
actually spoke up and acted on it. So I clapped for her.
Nice.
So what was your major in college? Was sequel just a class, or were you in
Well, undergraduate major was linguistics.
Me
And
too.
is that right?
I'm a
never
linguistics
knew
guy.
that.
Yes.
I took
Oh
a summer
my
school
gosh.
class.
Ah, you know,
That's cool.
actually, my daughter majored in linguistics too, but we came at it from two different directions. I came at it because I liked the analysis of language and making it logical, and I can bet
Exactly.
that was part of your draw too. But my daughter was always into literature, and she was an artist, and she came at it from the language point of view and the expression point of view.
Oh, that's super
But
cool.
we both ended up majoring in linguistics. Very interesting. But anyway, so I really liked the analysis and the syntax and semantics work, but I loved it so much. I took lots and lots of classes, and I finished all my requirements by the end of my junior year, except just numbers of credits.
Right.
So I needed some more classes my senior year, and a friend said, "Oh, how about like something in computers, because that's sort of like the new thing." It was a long time ago, and they were the new thing. So, so I signed up for a computer class, and I had this awesome graduate student as my programming instructor that I, got a terrible, terrible crush on, and loved programming. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll do some more. So the next quarter, I signed up for 2 classes that had nothing to do with programming, and it could have just like totally turned me off forever. The second quarter, I took I think that was an assembly language course. Well, that was programming, but it was completely different. And oh my gosh, I don't remember what I took, but it was something about computers and not about, maybe it was like circuit design or something
Right.
like that.
Ooh.
Which is funny, 'cause I
And
took that class too.
uh
Didn't care for it much.
but I thought, this is not what I was expecting, but I really loved it still. I thought, this is weird that I'm loving this, because I never thought I would love something like this. I did have good instructors. So my second quarter of computer classes, I realized I wasn't ready to leave school yet. I wasn't ready to enter the big wide world. So I applied to graduate school in computer science after just finishing one intro to programming course, and then halfway through assembly language and circuit design, and I applied to graduate school. And I got in. So, wow. So I got a master's degree in computer science, and then I didn't want to leave the university, so I stayed at the university doing teaching. As a graduate student, I was a teacher, and then I got a job as a lecturer at the university, and I just stayed at the university I stayed there for another 3 years or so, and then I got a job at a local college teaching, and then I came back to UC Berkeley and kept teaching, and then circle of life, we come back to Mr. Stonebreaker again.
Okay.
And I was pregnant, and a lecturer, and the lecturers had just gotten a union contract the year before that allowed maternity leave.
Wow.
And I found out I was pregnant like around October, after the quarter had started. So I went to the professor. Oh no, that can't have been it, because the baby was born in January. So but I had a contract already, and I went to Professor Stonebreaker, who was managing all the undergraduate instructors. That was
This is
his
going to work out well.
extra role that year, was managing the undergraduate instructors. And I went to tell him that I would be taking maternity leave in January. And he said, "You can't do that." And I said, "Well, it's in the contract, and I'm going to have a baby, and I'm going to need some time off." And he goes, "There's no way that we can support a replacement just for like a few weeks or so." And I
What did they
said,
think
"But,"
maternity leave meant?
I said, "But I'm going to have a baby, and this is in the contract." And he goes,
Well,
well,
put it off.
I understand that it's in the contract, and if you insist on taking it, you will not be rehired. So he had that power because I was on a
Wow.
year-to-year contract. So I could take the maternity leave. I could get some pay while I was off with the new baby, but he would have then the right to not rehire me, which he ended up following through on, and I wasn't rehired. And that was in the summer, fall 1987. And I was unemployed for a while, and then I had to
17.
start looking for a job. There I was. I mean, fortunately, I was married, but my husband lost his job at the same time.
Oh, no.
So
Oh, nice.
we were both unemployed. I had a 9-year-old daughter, and then we had this new baby. And we decided that whoever found a job first would have the job, and the other person would be the at-home parent. And there was Sybase. Sybase hired me just like within 2 days after the interview, and it was like the most exciting thing ever. I mean, mostly it was just to get a job, but
Sure.
I got a job, and there I started in the fall of 1987, over 30 years ago.
Wow.
And I've been doing Sybase/SQL Server ever since.
So let's go back to linguistics for a second.
Oh, okay.
Did you guys have a course that was similar to what we called government and binding theory? I got caught up in this course, and I didn't mean to. I was a sophomore, and I was taking my second linguistics class. And it was called government and binding theory, and it wasn't until I got in the class that I found out that it was a master's level course. Why in the hell they let me take it is there's no check, right? You can sign up for any course you want, evidently. And so it was a post-grad course, and it was on it's that course that teaches you how to diagram sentences and figure out parts of speech and whatnot in languages that you don't know.
Wow.
And so what we did was we started with Hausa, the African language, or as they say, Hausa.
Hausa.
That nice little click language, that Hausa.
Oh, yeah.
So we took Hausa, and they gave us paragraphs of text, and we had to figure out what the verbs and adverbs and nouns and all of that stuff were in the sentence structure. And they gave us, it's like a logic puzzle. It was just, they gave us like 2 or 3 clues, and then we had to figure the rest of it out. Right? You didn't have to translate it, but you had to figure out what the plurals were and all of that, right? And so the entire course was moving from one language to another, learning how to diagram these sentences and figure out the sentence structures and whatnot. And I worked my ass off in that class. I had one intro to linguistics course before that, and made a B in this one. A high B in this class.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. So did they have that kind of course when you were in?
I know we did a lot of analysis of certain interesting structures in other languages. I remember one course where we did a bunch of analysis of structure of Turkish. I remember that. But I don't remember one where we were like given an unknown language and had to solve it like a puzzle. I would have loved something like that at that point in my life.
Fun.
Not now. My brain is like shrieking inside right now. It's gotten a little older and more set in its ways. But at that point, oh my gosh, I would have stayed up all night to do something like that. That sounds
I was at least 2 years behind everybody else in the course.
Oh,
and
my
so
God.
stuff that they were kicking around, I was writing down furiously just the words to go look up the terms they were using so that I could at least join in the discussion tomorrow. You know?
A lot of what I did wasn't actually based on other languages. This was a point in academic linguistics where they were doing more with just there was like sociolinguistics and more pragmatic kind of stuff. And one of the big names that we had at Berkeley then didn't do other languages. It was George Lakoff was a professor at Berkeley in linguistics. And I had him for a class. In fact, that your description reminds me of that I signed up for George Lakoff's class because a friend of mine was doing it, but it was a way advanced course, and I was like, just, I think it was still when I was a senior. Yeah, I think that was one of the ones that I signed up for when I was still a senior, and it was a graduate course, but a friend was in it, and I decided to do it, and I felt like I was way over my head, but I still stuck with it. But it was just, I can't remember much about it other than it was way over my head.
Right.
But it was all English based, because George Lakoff did not do any other languages. He was more in analyzing meanings and looking to see how what you said really related to what you meant. And at that point, he was still married to Robin Lakoff, who did a whole bunch of the early groundbreaking work with gender and language, and what she was calling women's language. And we used to have these linguistic dinners where somebody would give a talk, and that's where I first heard a lot of her theories about just the way that women talk is different than the way that men talk. And she got through this whole talk about it, and I don't even remember the specifics about what she said. Like, a woman would never say this, or it just sounds really strange when a woman says this. And some man in the department, when she was done, said, "Oh, Robin, you've got permission to say that anytime you want." And he just didn't get that. It's like, it wasn't permission thing. She was a full professor. She had no need of his permission to do anything.
Exactly.
It was very weird. And the few other women in the room, there were more women, of course, in linguistics than there were in the computer courses I took. And so we sort of all looked at each other, but he didn't get that this was like, he was trying to be supportive. I'll give him a couple of points for that, but he didn't think it through. He didn't think it through. So anyway, so a lot of what I did, a lot of what was going on in the department at that time was not foreign language based, was like just language analysis and what is the real meaning and why can you say things this way and not that way.
Well, there's plenty to be had in English, so...
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. English is a pretty simple language.
Yeah. And
easily mapped out.
Yeah,
not a lot of exceptions.
Not diverse at all. No exceptions at all. Exactly.
They don't even have slang, really.
Not even when you get to the spelling. There was somebody just posted something on Facebook the other day that I responded to, where they were talking about what a difficult language English was, and then they gave all these weird spelling things. And it's like, the language is not the spelling. A language can be easy to learn but difficult to spell, or vice versa. And they're two different things completely.
And it's fun to play with language. Our kids have been doing a thing recently because there are little clips, video clips online, and one of them is one of those fast food signs with the letters that spell something out, the marquee. And it's supposed to say fresh avocados, but the spacing of the word of the letters is weird, and so the person speaking is like, "Oh, they've got free shavakadoos." And so the kids have been playing with that with their names, and so now all of their names, Ben is now Bean, and Eric is Erice, and Lisette, I don't even remember, it was like Lisite. And all of those are actually improper, but could be proper pronunciations of the names.
Yeah, so. But the problem with separating the language from the spelling is that, when foreigners learn English, you have to learn the spelling too. And English spelling is ridiculous. When you learn, especially the Latin-based languages, spelling is very consistent. There are very few exceptions, if any. And in English, it's like, you learn how to do something. You learn how to pronounce. I mean, we've taught 3 kids how to read. You've taught your kids how to read, right? And the first thing you do is you teach them, oh, well, here's what sound these letters make.
Right.
And then the next 5 things you come across are exceptions.
Speak the language at that point.
Right, so there's a sort of a leg up.
Yeah, with the
But
kids,
then-
they already are. You're right. Adults learn the reading and writing at the same time as the speaking. But a lot of times, if you just go by immersion, if you go, and like when I go to visit my daughter in Germany, I can muddle along in German in the grocery store, and actually, the truth is, I can actually read German a whole lot better than I can understand it, because people talk funny.
They talk
But-
funny.
But it,
You ain't from
yeah,
around here.
it is funny. Spelling is tricky, but it's not the same as saying a language is a difficult language. At least that's my point of view, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
I support this.
We could discuss that for another hour.
Because, like, okay, Finnish has very
I'm trying.
The language of Finland.
has very regular spelling, very regular. But to try to speak it, everything is done just by adding prefixes and suffixes. I mean, words can become even longer than in German. People laugh
Right.
about these humongously long German words. But in Finnish, it can become arbitrarily long, because you can just, prepositions are just added on to the end of a word. And for somebody to understand even what the word means, forgetting the reading and writing of it, just hearing it
Yeah.
but then you just add this one little extra syllable and then another little syllable and another syllable, so the word becomes something completely different.
There's a mutton in there somewhere. And
Yeah, that's what I think of when I think of a hard language. Or or languages that have lots of different inflections, and you have to be so specific about the tense, because there's 14 different tenses, and if you use the wrong tense, it means you're just thinking about doing something versus you actually did it, versus your mother-in-law did it.
that would be Latin, Greek,
Yeah.
Russian.
Russians
like that as well.
Yes.
They have
Yep.
so many declensions for the
Yes.
nouns, and so many
Yes.
conjugations. Yes.
And
I
that's
personally,
separate from the reading and writing of it. That's just trying to figure out what words to use. So
I personally have a big beef with vowels. I remember there's a story from Tim Ferriss. He was staying with a family in Japan, and he was trying to ask her, the mother, to to wake him early the next morning, but because of an mispronunciation, asked her to violently rape him in the morning or something like that. And it's like, wow, that because of a vowel change.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that one, because Japanese doesn't even have you've got to raise your tone or lower your tone, right? That's
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Chinese is tonal, right?
Yeah.
And you can say the exact same word and with different inflections, and it could mean anything from shower cap to shoelace to coffee cup to.
So really, if you think about it, it's really human nature to be ridiculous and come up with overly complicated systems. So it's really no wonder that the computer systems we come up with have reflected that, because it's just completely our nature.
And aren't we just grateful that T-SQL doesn't follow English spelling rules? That sometimes select is spelled this way, but other times it's spelled this way. If it's like
Login
this,
name,
yeah, I know. Don't get me started.
database ID.
Oh, but in the original sequel that I learned from Stonebreaker, it wasn't select, it was retrieve. And then is it I before E or E before I?
I
People
before
would-
E except after C,
for
except
all
when it's
those
not.
exceptions.
Yeah, except for all the other
But it's
exceptions.
like to have that be a word that you have to stop and think about how to spell it.
Yep.
It's like, no, this doesn't make
And
any
why
sense.
not get? Come on, guys.
Yeah,
You really
right.
you're dying to type that much. Why not get?
So, yeah, we do this entirely to ourselves.
So
But at least you can make up your own table names. T1, T2.
T1 is great.
yes.
Oh, God.
So what did you do at Sybase?
Oh,
What would you say
Sybase.
you did here?
They hired me to be
I hope so. You work there.
be
Let her finish.
in the technical support group. I interviewed for a training position was open at the same time, and I thought I was a shoo-in for that, but
Right.
it turned out that there was someone else interviewing who had already done corporate technical training and was just relocating to the West Coast, but she'd done exactly the same thing. So more qualified than me. Okay, she got the job. But then she left after 2 years, and I did move into the training organization. I took her job after 2 years, but
Nice.
which was fine. She was leaving. I was fine. I'd learned a lot in those 2 years, but I started out in technical support. Why they have people who are just learning start in technical support? But that seemed to be really common, at least in those days. I don't know if they do it anymore. This is where you wet your chops, is in technical support, trying to learn
absolutely.
as you're supporting.
Sean did tech support as his first gig, and I started work when I was working for Microsoft. It was on the tech support line. I wasn't a brand new DBA.
I actually started out in this industry working for HP on the French line.
And it kind of works because they've got, I hope it was the same at Sybase, you've got scripts for starters, and so you learn stuff from the scripts, and then they've got people that you can go and ask when the script runs out.
But it's like, well, no, there weren't really any scripts. There were not scripts in those days. There were people you could ask, and that first month, there wasn't, the company was really new. So there wasn't scripts. There wasn't an official training program. I started work on a Wednesday. There was a training class going in, so they just sent me to show up to the class in the middle of the week. I had no idea what they were doing. They gave me a bunch of manuals to read, and then basically it was like, learn this stuff, and then 2 weeks later they put me on the phone. So it was very stressful the first couple of months, where I could not answer anything without saying, let me get back to you on that. Can you hold? And going and talking to one of my colleagues and I realized they'd all been through the same thing, but at first it was like every single time I have to ask somebody, and they must be getting so tired of me. It was really, really hard. And then after about 2 months, a new version came out, and my manager walks into my cubicle and hands me a tape, a reel-to-reel tape, which had the software for the new version on it, and hands it to me and says, go test this install, make sure it installs properly, and walks out.
Had you ever done an install
I'd never done an install. I'd never touched the tape. I had never held a tape in my hands before that point.
Wow.
I had a general idea where the room with the tape machines was. So I started walking in that general direction. I looked around, I found the room, I opened the door. It was like in the movies, one of these huge big computer rooms with all these flashing lights and a few machines with the tape spinning in them. And I had absolutely no idea what to do, where to go.
Now, you must have, by that point, have seen Star Trek, so you were a little bit in your element.
Yeah, on Star Trek, they just say, computer, test install.
Much better interface.
I looked in the room. It was completely empty except for all these flashing lights and spinning tapes, and I closed the door, and I walked away, and I went over to the exit door, and there was a shelf by the exit door, and I almost set the tape on the shelf and walked out the door.
Wow, real closing doors moment there. Or switching doors.
I was so overwhelmed. I had no idea what to do, and the fact that the manager just said, go do this, just was almost too much for me. So I stood there, though, for a few seconds, and somebody came by. This nice older woman, and there weren't too many older women there, but this was a nice older woman, and she came by, and I obviously looked a little distraught, and she said, do you need something? Because I was still holding the tape at that point.
Right.
And I told her, and she goes, oh, okay, come on. And she took me into the room, and she sat down with me, and she must have stayed with me for like 45 minutes.
Oh, lovely.
And I found out later she was a vice president.
I was going to say that she had died 3 years ago.
She was a vice
And
president.
she still haunts that tape room to this day.
And
That's
she,
how
like,
you do it.
took this time.
Wow.
And I would have been out of there if it wasn't for her. She basically saved my career at that point.
Wow.
I did look
Did she
her up.
ever know that?
You know, I've tried looking her up a few times, and I think I finally found her just a few years ago, but she was long retired by that point, and I didn't find any contact information for her. Just some little blurb about her retirement, which had been 10 years before I found it. So it's like, yeah, I wasn't able to. I think I wrote it up at one point, and maybe she read it, but I don't know. Anyway, so that was my start at Sybase.
Nice.
But
I had a couple mentors like that who really took me under their wing.
Well,
and-
I wouldn't even call her a mentor, because then we never did anything together again.
Oh.
It was a
Single serving mentor.
It was a guardian angel, actually. That's what she was. So, yeah.
So did you have any mentors like that really took you under their wing and like are responsible for you, like for like a big chunk of what you were able to become? Because I did. I had two of them.
I think when I switched to the training department, the manager of the training department, I think he was very much a mentor and really cared about me and what I did and what I learned. And yeah, I would say that the manager in the training group, there was one time where there was some extra training budget, and this manager, unlike the other one who handed me the tape, was a technical manager. He actually did training sometimes himself. So he was going to New York to teach the advanced DBA course, and there was extra money in the training budget, so he decided to just bring me along. It was my first business trip to actually sit through the class, but in New York City instead of in Berkeley. So just come along to New York and sit through the class there. Oh my gosh. So yeah, that was the mentor. He was a wonderful guy. His name was Mike Maas, Maas. And I don't know what happened to him. But yeah, he's someone I would think of as a mentor. Not
So
from the
after
real
Sybase-
technical stuff. I mean, that I went and learned on my own, but just in terms of being a professional and doing what I was doing and yeah, all the other stuff.
So how long were you at Sybase, and why did you leave, and where'd you go right after that?
I was at Sybase for 4 years, 87 through 91. And then we had another baby by then, the one I'd had at Berkeley, and then I was the first pregnant Sybase employee. They had no idea what to do with me. HR called me in and said, you're the first pregnant employee. We don't have a maternity policy.
Sorry?
So
Is
what
there a
would
prize?
you like? What would you like?
Wow.
So that
To
was
not be fired?
No.
Great
Yeah, that's step one. No, it was very nice, very nice. And this was a woman HR manager, and she was very, very receptive to my requests. I was actually
good.
able to work part-time for a little while after
Wow.
my second son was born.
That's pretty unusual.
It was very unusual, but I was very appreciative. So, but we wanted to buy a house. We had these 3 kids now, and we wanted to buy a house, and we were in the San Francisco Bay Area, and my husband's father died, and we had a small inheritance, but we probably could have got a box in Berkeley.
Right.
And a box on a busy street. And we didn't
Right.
want to do that, so we started looking around, and we were looking at the beautiful Pacific Northwest. And there were several opportunities and several possibilities, and then Sybase offered me a position with their consulting subsidiary in the Seattle area, and would allow me to work at home so I could live far from the, driving distance, but not daily commuting distance. So So we flew up and looked around and decided we were going to move up to the other side of the Puget Sound. And we did that in 91. Yeah. And then bought a house. And the day we moved into the new house, why is this a recurring theme here? The day we moved into the new house, I found out I was pregnant again.
Oh, wow.
So we did have one Washington baby, and that was the end. That was the end. No more baby stories after that. But
I think that makes
I'm
four
gonna
total,
I'm gonna
is that
hold
right?
you to that.
I
All right.
have four
Is that-
kids.
Four kids.
Four kids. The
So
daughter
why'd you
had
leave
before,
Sybase?
and then the 3 boys.
Did you leave Sybase because you wanted to move?
Well, it was, we wanted to move, and
Right.
but Sybase did let me stay with them in their subsidiary. It was
Right.
their subsidiary that gave me a position in Bellevue, so I worked for the Sybase subsidiary for a year. But then I had another manager who reminded me of Stonebreaker that wouldn't cut me any slack when I was pregnant and wanted and even though I was agreed that I'd take this job because I could work from home, halfway, about 6 months later, says, oh, there's this big project over at Microsoft, which was a 2.5-hour commute each way.
Wow.
Said, there's no one else to do it. You need to do this. I was 6 months pregnant at the time. I said, there's no way I'm going to commute 2.5 hours each way every day. And he goes, well, you have to. And I said, I can't.
No, really don't.
No,
And
I really don't.
that's not what I was hired for. And it's just not going to work for me to do that. And I was doing a good job in what I was doing, but he felt like this project had to be taken care of. And I was the only person he had in his department to do it. And I said no. And I was expecting on Monday morning to get a call saying that I was no longer employed. But instead, I got a call from someone else saying my manager was no longer employed, and I had a new manager.
Oh,
Wow.
wow. Well,
So I don't think
That's
it had
fortuitous.
specifically to do with my situation, but it was definitely a much more pleasant phone call to get on Monday than what I was expecting.
it's kind of wonderful, actually.
Yeah, you're like, if I'd have woken up with my head sewn to the carpet, I couldn't have been more surprised.
So I was
fantastic.
able to keep working at home, but then it wasn't all, sunshine and roses after that. When I took the maternity leave for that child, then there was a big shift and a rearranging, and it wasn't specifically because of me, but the subsidiary was going through some changes, and there was not going to be a position for me anymore after that. After the maternity leave was over. So that's when not a real good time. We just bought a house. We'd spent every
Right.
last
Yeah.
dollar of our savings. We had a brand new baby, and they always say, make sure you have 6 months salary in the bank before you start doing independent work. And well,
Oh, yeah, totally.
that wasn't an option. So I just got some business cards and struck out on my own at that point. And
Might as well.
here I am.
So let's jump ahead a little bit. You are most known, I think, for the Internal series.
That would be my assumption as well.
Yeah. Now you took that over from Ron Sukup.
He wrote
he did-
he wrote one, and he hated it.
Yeah.
He did not like writing. It was more
How
than
did you get started with that? Did he come to you, or did you go to him, or did
It wasn't
did
him.
Microsoft come to you?
It was
How
the
did that?
publisher. The publisher came to me and said that Ron refused to write another word. He did not like that experience, apparently. And
What was so bad about it for him? Did you ever? Do you know?
some people just don't like writing,
All right.
and I can understand that. No, we never had any.
I like writing. I don't like editing.
We never had any deep personal discussion about it. But the publisher, I'd already started doing some magazine writing, and so I was known to some publishers, and Microsoft Press called me up and or emailed me or something. I don't remember how initial contact was made, first contact, and asked me if I would be interested in this, and I was, but I didn't immediately sign. So I talked with some colleagues, and one dear friend at Microsoft, whose opinion I normally really, really valued, we went out to dinner, and he tried to talk me out of it. He said it would just be way, way too much work, and there would be politics involved, and stuff was changing, and people were disagreeing, and finding the people to talk to. It was one thing for Ron Sukup, who worked there, but it would just be next to impossible for me. He really, really did his best over this whole Indian dinner to talk me out of it.
Maybe he was up for the same gig.
No, he wasn't. I knew, but no, he had my best interests at heart, but I didn't. I really wanted this book, so I took it, and I really don't regret it. It was true, everything he said. It was a whole heck of a lot more work than I ever could have imagined, but and the money wasn't anything to get excited about.
Right.
But
I've heard that you don't get rich writing sequel books somehow. Weird.
Yeah, although I think one person who wrote the exam prep books, the authors of those, at least in the early days, did pretty well. Pretty darn well. But
so what political could there be in writing an internals book? Where's the politics in that?
Well, some of it was involved in how much undocumented information to make public.
Sure.
Excuse me. Yeah, a lot of it was, oh no, you can't tell people this. Or, why would anybody want to know that? Don't worry your pretty little head.
Oh my.
They didn't actually say that. They didn't, but
but they meant it, I'm sure.
Was some of it. Why do you need to know that? Why do you want to know how the bytes are actually organized in a row, and how SQL Server finds a page in cache, or how it decides? All you need to know is how fast it works and what to do to make it go faster.
I can't remember who.
Then we can't call it internals then.
I can't remember who said, some poet, of what use is a newborn babe. And it's supposed to be self-evident that, well, of course, this is a thing we would want.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think I've heard that, but I never related it to this. Interesting. So yeah, a lot of it was, there was disagreement. There were some people who felt like, sure, say everything. And others who's like, no, you can't say that. No, you can't tell people that. So that was a lot of the politics.
So these days, because, we had an email exchange earlier this week about this and whether there was going to be a new one coming. And
a new internals book, yeah.
Yeah. And, with as fast as it's moving, I'm going to paraphrase what you told me. With as fast as the sequel releases are coming, it's really hard to crank those out so fast because, like you said, it took you 2 years, and you'd already be a version or two behind at that point. And well, number one, I say, well, yeah, but those internals aren't changing that drastically. I mean, a lot of the stuff, you don't have to go back and rewrite how big pages are and all that. Right? There's a lot of stuff you don't have to write. But have you considered, because this is a really big thing these days, is self-publishing. You could be a lot more nimble, or you could be a lot more nimble with the process. You don't have to go through MS Press or A Press or whoever you want to go to next, right? You could do it yourself, and then you could offer it in ebook only, and that way you could be more responsive. You could be more responsive to changes.
That's occurred to me, but still, a big book like the internals book is still a massive undertaking.
Sure.
And I do need lots of input and lots of communication from the developers at Microsoft, from the SQL engineers at Microsoft. So it's still, the actual publishing is just a small piece of it. So self-publishing wouldn't get rid of all of the pain of it, all of the things that make it take a long time.
Right.
So
But you could remove some of the politics because,
yes, yeah,
it's your book.
but
and
that's it wouldn't just make it wouldn't remove all of the barriers.
Well, and
Sure.
I'm imagining something like that, and we've already said you don't get rich off of publishing books, and I'm like, me personally, I'm just sitting here going, oh my god, that sounds like way too much work
You
for not
know,
enough
there is
payoff
that.
of any kind,
There
not
is
just monetary.
that also. So, if yeah, and at this point in my career, to learn this whole new skill of publishing a book, even though it's supposed to
Yeah.
be easy, there's still. I did talk to do you know Bill Vaughn?
Yes.
Maybe?
He's moved into the fiction world, and he's self-publishing a whole bunch of fiction stuff, and I've had some conversations with him, and he started saying yes, he would be more than happy to help step me through, but he gave me this whole list of things to take a look at, and it's a whole new skill set to learn. And do I want to stop and learn all this just for maybe what's the last few years of my career here? So far it hasn't become a driving force. It still might,
Right.
but if I could find someone else who's already done it, and because it's like, I always think about this like when you go to buy a car, you're at such a disadvantage because the people who sell cars
Right.
are selling them every single day, and you're only
Mhm.
buying one once every, how many years? 4, 6 years, and even more. So you just don't have the skills, and
Right. Right.
so to learn all these new skills just to get a book out, to find someone who does this, that this is what they do. Like I just revamped my website. And yes, I have the technical capability of figuring out how to put a website together. But every single thing I did would take a whole lot of research and a whole lot of trial and error because I don't do it every day. So I found somebody who does it every day, who was willing to set up the website, and she set it up in a way, and this was one of my requirements, that I could make changes really, really easily. Add a new course, add a new book, add a blog post. She built
That's
the
the way to do it.
infrastructure, and that's what she does all the time. So she's really good at it, and she knows it, and she can do it fast. And I can ask her a question, and she knows the answer.
Well, and web stuff has gotten so far past me. We both used to do a fair amount of web coding, and it's gotten so far past me. You've got all the different, platforms now.
All the different
and,
scripting.
You got different mobile considerations and security, and all. It's just
CSS has
go,
gotten way past
go.
me.
We paid somebody to do our site
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Just enough, right?
So
Just-
someone who does it all the time, yeah, you're paying for something that you could do, but it would take you so many hours to do it. The paying
This
is
is why I have other people change my oil.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't want to.
Oh, I went in to get my nails done, and my nail tech asked me why I took my dog to a groomer. It's like, can't you just give her a bath?
But I'm here.
Nails? And it's like, excuse me, I pay someone to do my fingernails.
Right?
I could do that
I carry
myself
those around with me all the
too.
time. Right?
And
there are things I do myself and things that's not worth it to me.
and she still didn't quite get it. I mean, in her world, grooming the dog was just like so easy that of course you're just going to do it yourself. And in other people's worlds, doing their fingernails is so easy. But no, right now I've got some money. I'm going to pay somebody to do it. At some point, I might not have the money. I might not get my nails done after I retire. I might give my dog a bath. I think I'd be more apt to keep taking the dog to a groomer than I would to take my own fingernails to a groomer. But that probably don't have to make that decision for a couple of years.
Well, good.
Also, my youngest son is now shacking up with a dog groomer. So we got one in the family. So that also adds to that attraction.
Makes you want to get a couple big dogs just to make it worth your while.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
So now that you're kind of on the other side of this, and may or may not have written your last official book, it's hard to say, right?
It's hard to say at this point.
Some people will get a wild hair and go, you know what, I'm going to do it, because maybe you'll think of something that will be a little less version specific, and you feel like
No,
diving
actually,
into it,
I was going to say that when you were mentioning how much that a lot of the internal stuff doesn't change. Well, a specific counterexample is, yes, the internal stuff itself doesn't change, but sometimes the way it's output. So like the DBCC page output pretty much is the same, except Microsoft changed the format. Instead of coming back in 4 chunks of 4 bytes, they started returning it in 5 chunks of 4 bytes. So the output looks completely different. So all these places where I have these page output bytes, and then I'm circling things and saying this means this and this means that, the output is not what you would see in the next version anymore. Yes.
Yeah, I've noticed
if
that.
you take the next step, you can probably figure it out. But I'm trying to say this is what it would look like and this is what it means. And that's changed. So I had to redo all of the DVCC page output, which was a pain. But that was...
Okay, there we go.
You got that.
We're recording now.
That's true. That's the important one.
Yeah. Well, you know what's really important to me is that I was recording when you said that everybody should have our food.
That's right.
That's the most important
thing.
Thing.
That is very important.
We made this big thing of enchiladas the other day. All those things are so good. I was fasting at the time, so I couldn't have any.
They were really good, though. And he made this new vegan nacho cheese. Oh, we ate that on absolutely everything. Oh, my God.
Yeah, the stuff is really good.
I could do vegan if I had Sean cooking for me.
Oh, totally. It makes it a million times easier. Yeah. Absolutely. I can still do it, but I would be eating a lot more, like, basically just bean tacos.
Yeah.
And store-bought vegan burgers and stuff.
Yeah, I need to make more of that cheese. It's oddly enough potato-based.
So good.
No, that actually, I mean, we did vegan for a while, a couple of different times, and cheese actually was a big stumbling block that we just could not find a good substitute.
It's gotten better, and we've got a couple of really good recipes.
Yeah.
But there's one brand in particular that's really outstanding. It's a treat because, you know, one round of it is like $7.
Yeah, that was part of the problem. Even
and it's still really high in fat.
Okay things.
You know, I mean, there's vegan, and then there's the spirit of vegan, right? Which is let's not sit around eating crap.
Because people do it for different reasons.
Because cheese, regardless of what it's made out of, is still so high in fat. You know, it's still junk food, regardless.
That nacho cheese, what has it got in it that's fatty? Does it have nuts?
It's got cashews, which it's not. That's not horrendous, but
I did a cashew-based sauce of something a long time ago. Yeah, that was really good. But anyway, let's move on.
Yes,
we'll move on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've skipped a whole handful of stuff here because we've lost our track. You know, we were on a nice roll there, and then we ran out of space.
We can always call Kalen again.
You could always call me again.
Wow.
We could talk anytime.
Aw.
You amaze me. So, you know, I wanted to ask, are there any other languages that you're still proficient in computer-wise? Or do you just now do T-SQL or... Oh, shut up, not you.
I certainly haven't done any coding in anything else in a long time.
All right.
No, I guess I wouldn't say proficient at this point.
You're a specialist now.
I am a specialist. Yeah, and even within SQL Server itself, I definitely have this niche area.
I myself have finally found kind of what to call my niche area, and it's query logic. This last blog post has really narrowed things down for me. My thing is query logic, being able to figure out, you know, especially how this will tie into this or the best way to pull this out and so forth. That was just kind of a side note.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so
everything with us is just a side note.
I know. So I wanted to talk about your course. You've got a big class coming up, and tell us the generalities. You know, when and where, and what's it called?
I have actually two online classes.
Okay.
One, and I don't know what the big is referring to. is
I was under the
big
impression that there was
exciting.
one big event coming up, but I may be mixing things up.
Well, it all gets mixed up in the wash. So I'm doing a conference in Poland next month, but
Oh,
in
that's
June,
fun.
I'm actually doing my first online classes with Brent Ozar.
That's the one I'm thinking
And
of.
that's what I thought you might be thinking of, but I'm actually doing two. I'm
Okay.
doing a half day,
Okay.
and then I'm doing a 2-day class. But there's a half day seminar, and then there's a 2-day class.
And are both of these
So
with Brent?
both of these are with Brent. I had thought about doing online for a long time, and
Right.
and when I was employed last year, we started doing some online um, training an hour at a time, but that was going to take like forever.
Right.
And I'm no longer employed. And so I want to do this myself. But just as we were just talking about, I don't have the infrastructure set up. It isn't something that I do all the time.
Right.
And Brent does it. Brent has a whole machine
It's true.
that's
he does.
doing this training, and he does it all the time. And he has a number of other people who are working with him.
Yeah.
I talked to one of his other trainers, Steph Locke, and she, is really happy to be working with him and inspired me. So I contacted Brent, and it was like really easy to get going.
Very cool.
So we put me on the calendar, and I will mention that the original date that we had for the half day seminar has been changed.
Okay.
It was going to be Friday, June, I don't have the June calendar in front of me. It was going to be a Friday, like June 9th, but we've just changed that to the following week on Thursday. So I think it's the 14th.
We'll look it up for sure. We'll put up.
So look it up for sure.
Underneath.
On my website, SQLServerInternals.com, you can go to the events page and you can see it there, or on Brent's site, you can find it there. So there's a half day seminar, and then the following week now there's a 2-day class.
Mm-hmm.
So really exciting. I'm really looking forward to working with Brent. He just seems to have everything set up, and all I have to go is, it'll be like coming and talking to you guys, except I will have some slides, I will have some demos, but it's stuff that I love and I've talked about a lot. So it will be, he just makes it a real easy thing to do. So I am looking forward to that.
Well, next time you come for dinner, you can bring slides and demos if you want.
Yeah.
Oh, there we
absolutely. We'll
go.
let you. It's totally fine.
Over dinner. Okay. That could be an interesting experience.
Okay,
I'm sure
so
your kids love it.
Yeah, I know, right? So let's talk about the half-day class first. What is it going to be?
Well, this is actually one of my favorite topics to talk about, because it does get frequently overlooked when people talk about tuning. When people talk about query tuning, they talk about writing good queries, the way Jen was just mentioning. They talk about good indexes, which lots and lots of people, including me, talk about. Indexes are very important.
Sure.
But
Ish.
something that frequently gets overlooked is how you can have the best queries in the world and the best indexes, and your query can still run abysmally slow if your data is locked by somebody else and you can't get to it.
Sure.
It doesn't matter how good your indexes are. It doesn't matter how cleverly your query was written. If you can't get the data, it doesn't matter. So a lot of people overlook locking and blocking. Actually, let me back up a bit. Locking itself is not a problem.
No.
SQL Server is locking all the time. Almost everything it does, it locks some data, but then usually it just releases those locks really fast. It's locking and releasing all the time. Locking is a problem when somebody's got some data locked when somebody else needs that lock and they can't get it. And so they're blocked. So it's blocking that's the problem, not locking. So when does blocking happen? What kind of locks are required that could cause blocking? So this is what I'll be talking about for half a day. So the different kinds of locks, we'll talk about how the different isolation levels change some of the locking behaviors. And then, of course, the tools for troubleshooting. If you think that you're blocked, how do you figure out who's blocking you and what can you do about it?
Sys
Both
processes.
Immediately. Well, yes,
We'll do it,
of course.
Here's
No,
another
actually,
tool.
I kept using sys processes for a long time. because there was a column that showed up in sys processes that wasn't in any of the new metadata until, I think until SQL 2014. There was one column that you could only get from sys processes that they didn't duplicate where they needed to in the new metadata. So 2014 fixed it finally, but it took a while.
Well, you know, as a quick hit, and it's kind of unpopular, right? But as a quick hit, I still use sys processes as like my very first go-to, just to see if blocking is happening, or just to see, you know.
I do too, because I'm in shops that still have instances back to 2005.
Yeah.
Okay.
A shop I'm doing work for now still has it back to 2005.
A lot of our clients are still. I've only got one client on 2014 or above. Everybody else is under.
Really?
But
Yeah.
Well, 2005 is when the new metadata came in, you know.
Yeah.
Sure, but again, as a quick hit thing, it's actually.
But
quite
just
good.
as a quick hit,
no,
my fingers
I'll
still say
admit,
sys processes.
I do some quick hit things. I still do like SP underscore this or that sometimes. I will still do an SP who every once in a while. SP help is much easier to type in than select star from
yes,
sys.objects where whatever, you know.
Highlight
Yes.
Alt F1 is the embedded shortcut
right,
for SP help, and I use
right.
that all the time. And,
Yeah.
and by
Yeah.
the way, now having heard what the half-day seminar is going to be about, I have it written down. I've got a junior DBA that I'm going to have her sign up for your class.
Oh,
Because
great, great.
She's going to get a lot out of that.
Yeah, this
It's not gonna
junior
be free, though,
DBAs
right?
who are just
No, but
starting. I mean, this isn't the most advanced thing that I do. There will be
Sure.
a few real advanced tidbits in it.
Yeah, she's not a brand
but-
new DBA, but she's,
But it's
she
yeah,
could
it's
use-
not for. It probably is a little too much for brand new, but it's for people who are just getting going and starting to realize, wait a minute, there's a whole lot more here that I really need to know about.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, this is a junior DBA. This sounds like a perfect audience member.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The other problem with that, of course, is you go to a half-day course and you get your head filled with all of this stuff, and then you got to go and practice it. And
Yep.
I've been doing this for a long time as well, and concurrency can still bite you. You know, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Even when I'm writing stuff, it takes me several tries sometimes to get the concurrency right on some of these things. And so it's even for somebody really experienced, it's not really easy to get concurrency right. Do you have any advice on that? Other
The
than
only real
lab,
advice
lab?
is to make sure you're aware of it and test for concurrency.
Yeah.
There are people out there still who, you know, they test all the queries and everything runs really fast, and they don't test in a multi-user environment. Sometimes they may test with 2 or 3 people hitting on the app at the same
That's not
time,
the same.
but they don't test with their expected workload. And here I've got a story about that it was a few years ago, but my first trip to Disneyworld was because somebody didn't do concurrency testing. It was an app from a company in Orlando that they had been working on for half a year, and the interface was gorgeous. They brought in a color consultant for the interface. It was absolutely beautiful.
Nice.
And all the queries worked fine, all the screens, all the buttons, click this, you get what you want. Everything looked good. And they decided to deploy on a Monday morning and had never done any multi-user testing at all. So they deployed Monday morning to the company at 9 a.m. It wasn't a web-based application in those days, but it was a whole company-wide application. And so they deployed at 9, and at 9:30 they were calling their usual consultant, who was totally booked up, who then got on the phone and started calling everybody he could think of to see who might be available. And I was working on a long-term project at that point, but I was able to get a 2-week break from them to go out to Orlando, and we had 2 days to get ready. But actually, backing up, here's the story. At first, I didn't want to go to Orlando because this was right after the last baby had been born. This is like one of the first gigs I had as an independent. I really wanted it, but I wasn't going to leave a baby. I mean, he wasn't a baby. He was almost a year old. And I would have gone for a couple of days, but I wasn't going to go for 2 weeks. I'm sorry, I can't do this. I've got a baby. Well, what if we pay you this much money? It's not the money. I've
Still
got a
have
baby. I still have a baby. Well, what if we pay you this much money? Don't you understand? It's not the money, it's the baby.
But it is becoming more tempting.
How about this much money? Okay, hold on a sec. And I got out my calculator, online calculator, and I do some numbers, and I realize that the amount that they're offering compared to what I'm currently making, that difference for 2 weeks is enough to bring the whole family with me to Orlando.
Oh, nice. Problem solved.
So, quick call to my husband. You want to go to Disneyland? I mean, Disney World? Sure. When? Wednesday? So, yeah. So, and it was because they had not done any multi-user concurrency testing.
Wow.
So actually, if you want to have me on your speed dial, then nobody says that anymore. I mean, that's old, right? Speed dial.
It's all right.
But, if you don't want to
still
do
this to get somebody to roll down their
and
window.
then call me if you're in Hawaii, then of course, don't do any concurrency testing and call me when you have trouble. But
Excellent.
but not everybody can do that and afford all those rates. So come learn about concurrency, because this is something that you need to put into your testing. You need, and what I find is that a lot of times there's not a whole lot of different things you have to do, like building a different index. It's just you have to understand the way that concurrency works so you can manage your transactions appropriately. Know when things are locked, know when the locks are released. Sometimes just knowing that makes it a real easy thing to write your code appropriately to work with that. And not a whole lot of changes in a lot of cases.
And that's just the half-day class.
That's the half-day class.
All right, tell us about the 2-day class. I can't wait to hear this.
The
You have to go to the
2-day
moon for
class.
that.
Hold on. Before we get started on that,
Okay.
Jen had a very... Now, I'm only going to tell you this because it's just us talking.
Okay. No one else is listening.
Just us and the internet.
Jen had something very similar to that on her first contract ever. And I'm telling you this because
I don't remember
it's very similar to what happened to you, except it takes a sharp right turn in the story. And I'll be as quick with it as I can. But this turned out to be a big explosion in the local paper, in the Dallas Morning News. So she worked for this company. She was a DBA for this company that was redesigning the criminal database for Dallas County PD. And she, to keep it fairly short, she begged them to not use clustered GUIDs.
You mean a clustered index on the GUID?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they refused. And I even did this benchmark that showed them. And you remember I showed you that benchmark a long time ago, right?
It does sound familiar, yeah.
Yeah. Where I benchmarked clustered GUIDs versus IDs. Right?
I think that's one of the first detailed technical conversations we had was about GUID indexes. Yeah,
I think so.
Oh, memories.
And so she took them this benchmark, and they were like, right. So she ended up leaving, not over that, but she ended up leaving, and then they went live, and we still knew somebody that was there.
As a side note, I wound up leaving because they ran out of money for their IT staff.
For the IT staff. Okay.
Yeah. So they went live with this project, and we'll say at 9 o'clock a.m. on a Monday, right? By 9:15, the entire database was so fragmented, nobody could do anything. And they kept trying to limp it together without changing what they were doing. And you had lawsuits because prisoners were staying in prison 2 weeks after their release date, and they couldn't find people who were being transferred because the system couldn't return anything, and it was just
that sounds like the plot of a movie. You can't find the prisoner in the middle of a transfer.
Yeah,
God.
And the whole thing it was so downhill. And
it made the papers.
And the reason I'm telling you this is because it dovetails into what you were talking about, right? They didn't do any concurrency testing whatsoever.
They didn't actually listen when we did.
And they didn't listen. And you know why they didn't listen? Because the CEO of that company, in the news article, in the paper, this was printed in the paper, that she had slept her way into that contract.
To become the CEO.
Yeah.
Well, to get that contract for her
Right,
company to
right.
get that contract. And we were like,
to get that contract with the PD.
yeah. And we were like, we read that in the paper. We were like,
Well, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
The
it makes
company
sense.
was
She
mismanaged
wasn't-
as hell. That she hired all the wrong people, and nobody listened to the expert's opinion. So
yeah. And I don't know why.
forgot all about that.
I've been telling companies this for years, and I know you have too. I don't know why benchmarking products aren't more ubiquitous, because that's how you test concurrency, right? Is you put, you
Some
put
sort of
50 or
load
100
testing,
users
yeah.
against it, and you do it, right? But talking companies into doing that, you might as well talk them into hiring 50 extra DBAs and trying to get them to. Guys, it's not that expensive for what you
when I
get
talk
for it.
about it in class, I joke about, well, you could get some load testing software, or you could just bring in 200 interns and have them start banging on the application.
I think that'd be easier.
Well, then you got to feed them pizza, though, and that can get expensive.
That's
Yeah,
true.
and it's again and again and again, whereas the software is just one cost.
I got
Yeah,
continue.
there you go.
So now,
It's
the 2-day course.
Capital
Now the 2-day course.
expense versus operating expense is what.
Exactly. Oh, that's a
Exactly.
different bucket. So
Yeah, it's not real money. It comes out of a different bucket, so that money doesn't really exist.
business is so weird.
I know.
Anyway, okay, so definitely back to you again.
Yeah, 2-day class.
So the 2-day class is more on query tuning. And so the reason I made the half-day class is because that's so crucial, but it didn't fit into the 2-day class. So let's let's do that as a separate thing. So the half-day on concurrency, locking and blocking, and dealing with those issues. And then the 2-day is not specifically query tuning, because Brent actually already has a full-day class on query tuning, and not him himself, but one of his people.
His company, yeah.
He offers a full day on query tuning and a full day on index tuning. So mine is the precursor to that. It's the internals that you need to know to understand query tuning and index tuning really well. So a lot of it is index structures. How are your different indexes organized so that you can really understand why a clustered index works here and a non-clustered index works there, and what in heck a covering index is. So just the organization, the storage, the structure of indexes, and then also the query plans, a little bit about the optimizer, looking at query plans, and not a whole lot, because that's more in the follow-on 1 day that Brent has, but a little bit about what you can notice immediately by looking at your plans. And then talking about cache management, how when a plan is reused, what parameter sniffing is all about, when is that
My
a good
favorite
thing?
topic. One of my favorite topics.
Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Yes.
And
It's one of those.
the different ways that SQL Server has for reusing a plan. When recompilation, one of the things I just am the most proud of is I have a flow chart. I wrote a flow chart for when recompile happens. And first it was just like about 8 steps in the flow chart, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm missing a whole bunch. And so then the second iteration of it had like 20 different things in this one flow chart, and I'm really proud of it. And I still think I'm missing something, but it's pretty cool. And so I show that in the class.
The chart should
Sorry?
evolve some more. Oh, I was saying that the flowchart will evolve more as time goes on.
It may. The old one stuck around for years before I did the new one. I kept saying, well, there's a little more to it than this. And then I finally did the new one. So it'll probably be another few years. But I really like my flowchart. And it's in PowerPoint. I mean, I did it with all the PowerPoint tools, not with Visio or anything like that. It's just,
I never
the
got the hang of Visio.
diamonds and squares, and you just make the lines in PowerPoint, which is, I live in PowerPoint, so it was relatively straightforward.
So the
So-
half-day class was kind of for new DBAs with maybe a couple of years under their belt, something like that.
Or even a year, year that you're starting to do some stuff, and you realize that, wait a minute, I need to understand what's going on here. And actually,
oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to just say that both of the classes are really that. It's not,
Okay.
I mean, both of them have some deeper internals elements that maybe someone with just 6 months to a year of experience is going to go, phew. But,
Right.
but most of it will still be relevant and digestible, as long as you sort of have a clue of what SQL Server querying is all about.
Well, and I'll tell you, we actually went to a user group meeting last night, and we were talking to someone about training in general and how people approach their sessions. And she was saying how, even as a DBA with many years under your belt, there are big gaps in your education. And my theory, of course, is that because there's not one real syllabus. I mean, you can kind of go by the certification guides as the closest thing that we have, but I'd be willing to bet an awful lot of mid-level DBAs would get a lot out of your classes too.
When I teach these live, there's always people who say, oh my gosh, I never realized that before.
Right, exactly.
Or one little trick that I tell them, it's a 2-day class, or when I go live, sometimes it's a 5-day class. And sometimes there's somebody who knows a lot of it, but there's one or two things. And then there's people that are like connecting to their home systems in the middle of class, VPN and VMs are like this awesome future thing now. We didn't, when I started training, I did it with transparencies, overhead. We didn't even have PowerPoint. I had to carry these boxes of transparencies to teach the classes.
Can I ask you a question about that?
The olden days. Let me finish this though.
Okay.
And they'll be connecting to their home systems, and sometimes, in the middle of the class, they'll do something that I've just talked about, which like solves a problem that they've had for months, if not longer. And it's like, oh, this was worth the price of admission, just this one little thing, but nobody knows up front what the one thing for them is going to be. So they have to sit through the whole thing.
Absolutely.
But,
we've seen that kind of thing time and time again. You're right.
Oh, it's to me?
Yeah, no, it's
okay.
You were.
How do you make a transparency?
With a copy machine.
Oh, okay.
You just, it's with a printer or a copy machine, but it's a different kind of paper that you put in. It's not paper.
Okay.
It's transparent. Transparent paper.
Plastic sheets.
Yeah, plastic sheets. You just put in the printer or the whatever it's called for the copy machine. Yeah. But they were heavy. They were heavy. Like, when I did a 5-day class, I had a box that was that thick of my transparencies.
God help you if you trip and spill them all.
Exactly. Well, that's like the old, I did punch cards too, Jen.
Yep.
Yep. I have the memories of, of course it never happened to me, but I do have memories of seeing people with their cards spread out all over the floor of the data center.
God.
Oh,
I tell you what, I'm kind of the baby of this particular group, and so I'm proud to say that when I started on computers, I was a kid, but I started on the floppies, the bigger floppies. I'll say the medium-sized one because they had those huge, what were they, 11 inch or something like that.
You mean the ones that really were floppy?
Yeah, the 5 1/4.
5 1/4. That's where floppy got its name, because they were actually floppy.
So I have never touched.
3.5 came in, and I remember my programmer son, my middle son, is like, why do they call these floppies?
Because they're floppy
on the inside, yeah.
He thought when he first heard the term hard disk, he thought it was the difference between the 5 1/4 and the 3.5.
Right.
Because the 5 1/4 was floppy and the 3.5 was hard. So he thought the 3.5 was the hard disk.
Sure.
And it's like, no. But why, Mom? That doesn't make any sense. I think he's part Vulcan. It's like everything had to make sense, or he just couldn't deal with it.
Because this is how humans are. We make things more complicated than we have to be. See, that's a callback comes all the way back.
That's a circle of life. Yes, indeed.
So a couple more things to finish up.
Okay.
All right.
Because we're running really long here, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine with us.
Sure, but you're probably hungry.
Yeah, this is so much fun too. Although I do have some other things on the schedule for this morning.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But this is delightful. We should do this again.
We shall.
We will.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So real quick, what is something in SQL that you are glad is gone, or at least never took off to begin with? Because some stuff, they don't hit a bullseye every time.
Right.
How about English query?
Ah,
I don't know how many linguistics people they actually brought in to help with that. It
What
just, do you
what
not even
time
remember
frame?
that?
Right
Oh,
now, I don't. It's ringing a faint bell. What time frame was that?
I think it was 7. I'm
was
thinking it
it?
was 7. It never got much traction because it
Okay.
didn't work at all. I saw
Yeah.
some real cool demos because in the demo, they just demo what works.
Of course. Why would you
And
demo anything else?
and then anybody who got their hands on it, if you went beyond the demo, you couldn't get anything out of it. It's like people
Right.
were
Yeah.
hoping it was like Star Trek, computer, find me all the rows from all the customers that have done whatever. It's like, no, no, it's not that at all. And I
Okay.
think they overhyped it. Not that there isn't some place for natural language understanding, but I don't think it's in the database system itself. Um,
Well, and it certainly wasn't, what is that, 20, 30 years ago? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, they overhyped what it could do, and then anybody who really knew how to test out something like that very quickly saw that there was nothing to it. It was smoke and mirrors and
Yeah.
nothing substantial to it. So
They
it was
tried.
it was too
Okay.
the fact that it could have been so exciting, and that they were really trying to advertise it as being, the future, the next step. Talk to your database in English, and then it was just so nothing there. That was very disappointing. So, being, from my linguistic background, that's very high on my list.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. And
So,
you had one more.
is there something? I got 2 more.
Oh, okay.
So, what is the thing that you've been clamoring for a long time that hasn't made it in yet?
Ugh.
You can pick a couple things if you just can't decide.
You know, that's really not my department. I
Oh,
mean,
come on.
no, mine is like working with what's there and understanding what they've done. The people that are out working with cutting edge applications that really need something new. I'm not one of those people right now. So,
Right, but you work with internals enough to say, man, it'd be so much easier to do this if they would just do this. If we
If
could
they
just
would
have
make
it.
DVCC page supported and
See, like for one of like one of my things is it would be really nice if they would add the latest CheckDB information to sys databases, so you didn't have to do this ridiculous parsing of DBCC page, right?
okay.
Something like that. You just something that
something
that
subtle.
they could do that would just make things better.
Yeah, it would be nice to have some graphical interfaces, or graphical interfaces for some of the tools. So, because my eyes are getting older, and to have to look at the individual characters, and sort of hard
Sure.
to enlarge them. But that one I'm going to have to think about. There isn't anything,
Okay.
Sean, that's just sort of nagging at me. Why don't they do this? At
Actually,
least
now
not
that you've
now.
said it, it would be nice to be able to adjust the font size on the Object Explorer.
Yeah, zoom it.
I'm just saying.
Not quite the same. Yeah.
Not quite.
Yeah,
And
it's
you
not.
had one more.
Yeah, one more, and then we'll let you go. And it's our famous question. We love this question.
Uh-oh.
Itzig holds the record for best answer of all time.
Which, there's no
Oh,
shame in not
thank
being
you.
able to measure up.
No
Thank
pressure
you.
though. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made on a production system?
Well,
That one.
you're not going to get a good answer from me, because I didn't usually work on product. I was not a production DBA.
Yeah, you were.
So-
Okay. Well, Itzig's record
No.
stands then.
All right. No, I can tell you a few experiences that when I was working for Sybase, I ran into a new company DBA in the elevator one morning, and and we got chatting and we became friends, and it was his first day on the job. It was his first day on the job as a new company DBA, you know, for their IT department, which we didn't call IT department in those days. I don't know what we called it. But just a couple of weeks later, he called me up because I was the only person he knew that really knew the product, and said he was having this horrible blocking issue, and he couldn't figure it out, and he couldn't find anybody else to ask. Everybody else was off fighting fires somewhere else, and could I please help him? So I went to his office, and we ran the tool. This was against the production server. We had to see what the problem was, and we looked at the tool that actually read the log records to see who. That's all we could do in those days, to see who was actually doing what. And I brought up the tool because I had been in support, and I knew how to use this tool to read the log, and looking to see who was doing nasty things, and we found it. But it was my boss.
Oh, wow.
So do I go and like tell my boss, oh, you got to stop look what we found? No. So I sort of explained as much as I could to the DBA, so he could try to pretend he was the one who found it without my help.
Very nice.
But
that's not bad.
But that's one of my few production stories, because I usually didn't hit production. You know, I have secondhand stories from students. A student that became a friend said that she worked for a small company and was training somebody new into how to just write basic SQL queries, and was showing them how to do an update, but accidentally did it on production data. But she was doing it on her own record. She updated her own employee record to say no dependents.
Oh no.
So, and then didn't realize she hadn't rolled it back. And her paycheck was always, you know, auto pay. So she didn't realize there had been basically, or was it the opposite? No, it was the opposite. She had put in like 10 dependents.
So they're withholding a whole lot more.
Or wait, what was it?
Or no, withholding a lot less.
Withholding a whole lot less, yes. So she ended up with a huge tax bill that she absolutely was not expecting, and couldn't figure out why she hadn't had withholding all year, and finally figured it out. But
stay off of production, kids.
That's right.
So
it's towards the middle or end of his story, uttered the phrase that sticks with me today, that
one
I
of my
love so much.
favorite phrases of all time.
And after doing a couple more things to ensure I couldn't recover, I love that.
But that's okay, because we didn't get nearly as good of a life story out of Itzik. So
this is true. This is true.
So you win in that department.
Okay.
So Kalen, it has been a delight.
It really has.
And we will make you the biggest feast possible next time you come.
You know, I'll tell you what I was just thinking about before we started this morning was one of the things that was the most disappointing at the last PASS conference, when I actually was employed, was that I didn't get to hang out with you guys as much. So
you had to hang out at your own booth, yeah?
I had to hang out at my own booth. So if you're there next time, I will
totally there.
I will not be employed, and I'll like tweet like crazy. Come talk to me at.
Aww, that's so sweet. So, what is your favorite feature of Minion? No, I'm
kidding. We're not making this about us. All right, we'll sign off, and then we can say our goodbyes.
Yep, we're gonna have lunch, but we will stop the recording